Welcome back, everybody. So here we are with issue 17, the bonus issue. So let's go ahead and get started on this. We're going to talk now about the TIE Advanced X1 prototype. So this was a prototype. Darth Vader was the only one to use this prototype, so that's interesting. He used it at the Battle of Yavin, as we all know, and it was knocked out of control by the Millennium Falcon. So its name suggests the TIE Advanced X1 is intended to be an improved replacement for the standard TIE fighter, offering a higher speed and more comprehensive specifications. The only example ever made was the property of Darth Vader, who tested the prototype extensively and flew it in combat at the Battle of Yavin. Okay, before we get too far into it, let's look at some of the specifications here. So it's 9.2 meters long. Its maximum speed is 1,200 kilometers per hour in atmosphere. Its mega light is 105. It's got a Class 4 hyperdrive, and as we've learned, Class 4 is actually a slower hyperdrive than, say, a Class 1 or something. But that would be okay because it's far more than what the other TIE fighters have, which is no hyperdrive. It's got sublight engines of the basically the twin ion engines. It does have shields, which most TIE fighters did not have shields, so that's important. Its armament is the laser cannons, 2 of them, and a cluster missile launcher with 20 cluster missiles. It supports 1 crew member, and it's got a cargo capacity of 150 kilograms, which also includes 5 days of rations. So, even though it never made it into volume production, the TIE X1 provided a useful testbed for features that appeared in the TIE Bomber, the TIE Interceptor, as well as the later TIE Avenger and TIE Defender. It did have some advanced performances. A lot of it was due to the configuration of the wings, and that helped quite a bit. But it was, because it was heavier and it was a little bit harder um, to fly. You know, it took a very special pilot to be able to fly it and fly it well. So that's pretty important. Um, One of the reasons why they bent the wings was it made it a smaller target. It made it harder to hit. Plus the fact that you throw in shields, and it was definitely something that could stay in the fight for a long time. Uh, some of the extra power was diverted to engines. To energize the ship's deflector shield generators, a feature that no other TIE fighter had. So, yeah, the solar panels did generate more energy, but like I said, it was used to help support that deflector shield and that kind of stuff. So, uh, all combat craft carry powerful electronic jamming systems to stop enemy ships achieving target lock in battle. Although the standard TIE fighters, formally effective targeting equipment, possessed an advantage over the rebels' older modules, the TIE Advanced X1 was fitted with an even more sophisticated and powerful target tracking and acquisition system. Although the instrument needed frequent adjustment during combat to ensure that it would deliver the best performance. So that's pretty important to keep in mind. Um, of course, even as a boy, Anakin exhibited exceptional piloting skills, becoming the first human to compete and win at pod racing. So yeah, let's see. It was a huge step forward from the standard fighter, which had none at all, meaning the hyperdrive. So that's pretty important. Um, it did have a very well equipped, more spacious cockpit with rations for up to 5 days. So that's pretty important. Um, One of the things that I thought was interesting is I'm going to talk about here. Uh, Where we have Vader took delivery of the ship early in the Galactic Civil War and campaigned it on several occasions. His fighter had a somewhat checkered career, even being stolen for a while, but in Vader's hands, it nearly determined the outcome of the Battle of Yavin. The rebellion would surely have turned out very different had the Millennium Falcon not joined the fray. Recovered and repaired, the TIE X-1 might have formed the basis of a new series of TIE fighters, but that was ruled out on the basis it was much higher cost. Only a few squadrons were equipped with them before the Imperial Navy opted for the TIE Interceptor, which traded the hyperdrive and shields for blistering top speed and lower prices. Um, Somewhere in here, uh, oh, here we go. This was important. So, uh, while Vader uh, was on board the Death Star to oversee the hunt for the battle station's stolen plans, his personal fighter was kept in readiness. At the Battle of Yavin, realizing that the threat from the rebel fighters was greater than had been acknowledged, the Sith Lord took personal charge, handpicking 2 Imperial pilots and standard TIE fighters to act as his escorts. Vader personally destroyed several of the rebels making their attack run. He was about to shoot the last X-wing when his wingmen were attacked by the Millennium Falcon. One of Vader's wingmen crashed into the TIE X-1, knocking it into the other TIE fighter and sending it tumbling out into space. Vader escaped the destruction of the Death Star and was able to regain control of his vessel as its hyperdrive was still functioning. Vader made a jump to the planet Vol, where he was able to crash land his damaged fighter. So this part here, in conjunction with talking about it being recovered and repaired, um, that's basically what happened for those that wanted to know how Vader was able to get away and all that with the Death Star blowing up. It's because he had hyperdrive; he could escape through hyperspace. So that's important. Filming the X-1 behind the scenes, faced with the need for moviegoers to be able to spot Vader's ship easily during the cinematic battle over the Death Star, ILM came up with the bent wing concept. The new wings were made from a honeycomb plastic light diffuser grill, as distinct from the slatted material used on the regular model ships. And a second set was made up to show the damage after Vader collides with the wingmen. Apart from that, the filming miniature was based on standard TIE fighter cockpit with a hexagonal window at the rear. This means that the model does not match the live action scenes showing Vader in the cockpit, as the full size set was made without a rear window. So yeah, he basically is just saying that that's how they kind of came up with the design. Why they came up with that design, they wanted it to be different so you could distinguish who Vader was and who everybody else was, and they just used a regular TIE fighter for their filming. So that's pretty cool. Visiting Mustafar. So if you've seen uh, Revenge of the Sith, you're familiar with Mustafar. So um, here's some information about it. It's 53,000 light years from the core. It's in third in the orbital system uh, in position. Its diameter is only 4,200 kilometers. That's roughly about a third of the size of Earth, so that's pretty interesting. It's got Type 2 um, atmosphere, so they recommend using a breathe mask. Very hot. It's got standard gravity, caves, lava flows, blah, 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 and zero surface water. So this talks about how Mustafar kind of became the planet that it was. And it also talks about some of the history of it. So apparently, uh, they'd gone. The Sith some uh, had some spent some time at Mustafar, as well as the Black Sun crime syndicate. Mustafar was once green and lush, however, thousands of years in the past, cataclysmic struggle between the Sith and the Jedi pulled one of the nearby gas giants, Justified and Lafrani, out of orbit around the primary star uh, Prayat, suspending the little planet on an erratic path between the two immense gravitational fields. The resulting tug of war between them ripped the crust of the much smaller Mustafar apart, allowing the molten lava to flow to the surface. So that's basically the history of how it became what it is. And basically, because of that, it's got active volcanoes and all that kind of stuff. I would guess, since it had been lush and whatnot, that naturally it's not hot, but because of all the volcanic activity and all that kind of stuff, that is what makes it hot. So if I had to guess, that's what I would say. So over the years, it kind of went through different hands, and it was very well known for its um, rich minerals and energy resources on the planet. Um, and it was even where's it? It talks about it. Someplace it even mentions that it was like in the hands of the Trade Federation or something like that during that process. So the mining bases, many rival organizations have exploited Mustafar's mineral wealth. Damask Holdings established a base on the planet before the Clone Wars, as did the Clegger Corporation mining facility, an associate of the Techno Union. Techno Union is the one I was thinking of. After the latter was destroyed at the end of the conflict, Mensik's mining facility was built as a near copy of the original installation, designed to process almost 5,000 tons uh, of minerals per day from the lava flows. The Imperial Mercanite mining facility was blown up by the rebels at around the time of the destruction of the first Death Star. So this is probably slightly off because in Rogue One we learn that Vader actually had his castle there. Now that's not to say that he didn't have his castle there with these other um, different facilities, particularly if it happened to be an Imperial mining facility. But I kind of got the impression that Vader's castle was more of a place of isolation and seclusion than it was just some place to be. So I'm going to guess, since his castle was there, that these actual mining facilities didn't go there later on. So filming behind the scenes. Model Lava, the main Mustafar model, was built for Episode 3, was carved out of high density foam, then skinned with resin and paint to give it a realistic rock effect. The entire set, which was a huge 8 meters wide by 11 meters long, was then tipped up 10 degrees so that the rivers of molten lava would naturally ooze and flow along through the three channels made from the clear plastic glazing material. The lava itself was made from tens of thousands of liters of methacel, a food thickening agent made from cellulose pulp. This was dyed yellow and lit from below through the transparent plastic riverbeds, using 250,000 watts of studio lights to give varying shades of yellow, red, and orange depending on the thickness of the metrocell. For added authenticity, clumps of black powdered cork were sprinkled on the surface to look like rock particles being carried along on the lava flow. To keep the rivers of lava in steady motion, an elaborate pump and filtration system took the methocell from the bottom of the set back up to the top again. More methocell was used to film explosions on an outdoor lot at ILM, together with shots of the bank where Anakin fought Obi-Wan Kenobi. The Mustafar model sequences took 8 months to film, which was the longest model shoot in ILM history. The final result on screen marries multiple motion control passes over the set with close-ups of the action, digital animation, and footage of real lava eruptions shot on Mount Etna in Sicily. So there you go. That was pretty interesting. Putting a starship or satellite into orbit means holding a position outside or on the fringes of a planet's atmosphere. The maneuver can be part of a regular arrival or departure, or it can be used as military tactic during planetary assault. There we go. So this talks about, this is part of the Secrets of Spaceflight. So, and this is actually talking about uh, achieving orbit and what have you. So, um, I'd like to think that we can all kind of figure this out. So basically, what you have to do to achieve orbit is you have to match your ship's speed with the gravitational pull, and that will help keep you just in orbit of that planet. So there's a kind of a couple of um, different things that you can do along with that. Um, so it talks about an orbit results when there's a perfect balance between a starship's forward motion and the force of gravity pulling on it. If a ship is moving too fast when it approaches a planet, the pull of gravity may temporarily deflect it from its course, but it will soon break free and continue on its way. However, if it is moving too slowly, it will be pulled towards the planet unless the crew takes action, will fall to the surface. So that was, pretty important to note. Then it talks about kind of some of the holding positions and geosynchronous orbits. So a geosynchronous orbit, if the craft also aligns uh, its orbit exactly with the direction of the planet it is spinning by flying parallel to the equator, it will appear to hover over a single point. This is called a geostationary orbit. Visiting starships often use this maneuver for aerial bombardment or surveillance, and for convenient transship to landing spot below, while geostationary satellites are useful for communications. Um, so yeah, it kind of talks about different uh, type of orbit types, and this is up here is demonstrating the geosynchronous orbit, basically saying that like this planet will move just a little bit, but the ship's going to have to move farther, so it's actually going to have to travel much farther and faster. And in fact, it says it has to travel much faster than this to appear stationary. So yeah, um, so that's pretty interesting. Talks about leaving orbit and accelerate fast enough to break free from the pull of gravity and fly off at a tangent. The amount of engine thrust that the pilot needs to apply depends on the height of the orbit and also on the ship's position around the orbit. If the vessel is an elliptical orbit, it requires less power to overcome the force of gravity when it is at maximum distance from the planet. So, yeah, that's kind of important to note is, that kind of thing. This I thought was probably by far the most interesting part of this, and I think a lot of people have wondered this quite a bit about um, A New Hope and the Death Star orbiting Yavin to get there. So the fact that the Death Star needed to orbit Yavin before targeting the Rebel base on its moon had a decisive effect on the battle that followed. And ever since the first screening of Star Wars Episode 4, fans have argued about why the battle station didn't just emerge from hyperspace next to Yavin 4 and destroy it without giving the rebels time to attack. The rationale is that even an object as vast as the Death Star would be affected by the gravity of such a huge gas giant as Yavin, and needed to arrive from so and needed to arrive from hyperspace into a stable orbit. Given that the Death Star's immense mass gave it an enormous momentum, the battle station would not be able to maneuver quickly, and been it wouldn't have been possible for the Imperials to make a jump to a spot where they could target Yavin 4 directly because their orbit would have been affected by its gravity. Once the Death Star arrived off Yavin and went into orbit, its maximum velocity was fixed because its speed would affect the orbital altitude. Waiting 30 minutes for the orbit to bring the Death Star into firing position made perfect sense, especially given Tarkin's supreme confidence in the impregnability of his super weapon. So that is very important. I'm guessing there's probably a few people out there that's wondered that themselves. So um, I find that pretty compelling kind of evidence. So and then finally, since we're talking about the corridors here, while Star Wars is set in a galaxy far, far away and a long time ago, its dimensions are those of the everyday universe occupied by the film crew. Based on the imperial rulers commonly used in Britain in the 1970s and still in official use in the USA. The corridors in the Falcon are 4 foot 6 inches in radius, and their panels are all measured in feet and inches. Metric dimensions do not appear widely on the drawings until the 21st century with designs for Episode 2. So there you go. That's uh, kind of another interesting thing. All the measurements were in inches and feet, and there you go. That concludes the bonus material for issue 17. Next time we'll be doing issue 18, and we're going to be going over the Falcon's upgrades and sectors of the galaxy. Woohoo! Looks like we're going to have some more frame, some more of the arches, corridor arches, so those will be interesting. And I'll probably bring over this part. I'll bring the entire thing over. There's actually two pieces. I'll bring it over so you can see it all put together or whatnot. But moving forward, we'll just go without dealing with those. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and um, hopefully you continue watching. If you guys have any questions, any concerns, anything, any other topics or anything like that that you'd like for me to cover with any of this stuff, please let me know. And as always, may the force be with you. Always.